Welcome to the Sciammas Podcast, where we talk to the most experienced people in B2B to find answers to one simple question. How can you become and remain essential to your strategic customers? Tune in as our guests reveal what it takes to become the supplier they cannot afford to lose. Learn how to level up your account management strategies to promptly deliver speed, convenience, and success to each customer. Let's jump into the discussion right now.
Hi, and welcome back to the Executive Conversation, the Sciammas Podcast. I'm Gordon Galzerano, Sciammas President and CEO, and you're listening to part 3 of our very special series on executive conversations with Jacques Sciammas, President of Selling to Executives. Jacques, welcome back to the broadcast.
It's a pleasure to be here, Gordon. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And so far, we've covered a lot of ground. In the first 2 segments, we've explored how to think like an executive and how C-suite executives like yourself are changing and adapting, especially as we were talking about these times of uncertainty and the macroeconomic and geopolitical headwinds that you're facing and others the same, the proliferation of technology and new competitors, and with that comes changing expectations of customers. The C-suite and decision-making process is growing and evolving. All of that, tremendous insights that you've provided to us and our audience so far. We're now going to turn our attention to the third piece, and that's about preparation. How to do research and preparation effectively, decoding executive priorities, and ensuring that as sellers or customer-facing teams, when we're meeting with you and others, that we're driving real value for you through your lens, in your language, aligned to the priorities and outcomes that you have. So let's kind of just roll right with what's next. Jacques, welcome back. And so if we were to start first with, we talked a little bit about in the previous segments about discovery and preparation and how it's really, really important for teams to understand the landscape within their customer organization and the executive map and their organizations, and focused on what's most important, their priorities, KPIs, et cetera. What's your sage advice to them on some of the tools, not necessarily specifics, but some of the ways they should be doing preparation, especially today, as information is much more readily available? How would they start that process, or should they?
Okay, so let me start by giving some context in terms of why we think that preparation is really key. Because when they polled CEOs, being the top and N-1 people reported to the CEOs, when they polled them in terms of how did your meeting go with the salespeople, most of them, i.e. 80% of them, said the meeting did not bring it any value. So the meeting did not go well. And when they asked them why, they said because they weren't prepared. It doesn't mean that the people were not smart, educated, did a lot of preparation, but they weren't prepared for these meetings with the CXOs. Ironically, by the way, when they asked the salespeople the same question, about 3/4 of them said the meeting went very well. So there's a big gap in terms of the perception how the meeting went. The salespeople may have thought it went well because it took the entire 45 minutes, or they didn't get thrown out, or we said thank you. But the sales people have a different perspective than how the executive. How do we think about it? How do we know if the meeting went well? After the meeting is over, we think, what did we learn that we didn't know before that's of value to us? If the answer is nothing, that's a waste of time. That's not a good meeting. Maybe a friendly meeting, but it's not a valuable meeting. I basically invested money of my company and I got nothing in return. Bad return on the time investment. So that's why, in context, why preparation and research is really key, because that's the number one complaint of CXOs meeting salespeople.
Jacques, you triggered something for me because I was thinking back to my days at Cisco when we were developing our most senior sales leaders, the general managers for the largest logo companies around the world. And when you were talking, just that brief example of how the executive walks out feeling like I got limited or no value from the meeting, but the salesperson walked out feeling like it went great. Oftentimes it's because they covered the things they wanted to cover. You mentioned they used the time, but they also checked all the boxes on all the things they wanted to talk about. But it was a misaligned agenda. It was a misaligned conversation because it was inside out. It was everything that the seller wanted to talk about versus what the executive wanted to talk about. And or back to what we talked about earlier. Do you understand my business and how are you relevant to my business? So it's pretty easy how that could, that misalignment could happen. And to your point, they were prepared, but prepared on the wrong things. So what's your advice? How do they make that transition from inside out to outside in then relative to discovery and preparation?
It comes back to putting yourself in my shoes. And basically, you got to prepare to know my industry, to know my company, and know me. You need to basically know how does that proposal impact me? How does it address my pain, my goal? This is not about you. It's not about your company. It's not about any of that. I'm not interested in that. I'm only interested in it if it helps me. So we can get to you, when it's relevant, when it's applicable, when it's a natural flow. But first, just think of it, as you point out, inside out, from the top down, the top being the client, the top being the CXO. And always think of it in terms of how am I going to make a decision whether to invest or not. And if you kind of think, forget about your commission, forget about your quota, forget about all of that. Just think of being an advisor, just a friend of mine who's trying to help me. What are you proposing that's going to help me? Start with that. Because if 80% of CXOs are unhappy with what they got out of the meeting, there's a reason. You're probably not coming in with something. So before you go into a meeting, prepare. Lincoln used to say, if I had 8 hours to chop down a tree, I'll spend 6 hours sharpening the axe. No different in sales. Sharpen that axe of preparation, because then those 2 hours of meeting are going to be valuable, and valuable from the executive point of view, not just from your point of view.
Yeah, in one of our earlier segments, we were talking about how oftentimes the left hand or the right hand don't really necessarily understand one another inside of an organization because perhaps they're siloed, right? Marketing doesn't always directly connect to sales. Finance and operations might be more behind the curtain, let's say. To what degree of importance do you put on a seller that comes prepared to share insights and information from your peers in your organization to better understand the connected tissue and what's going on in their function versus yours? Do you put much value on that level of, let's say, research or discovery?
I would put value to know the KPIs of each executive and what your proposal does to each of these executives' KPIs, whether they're operational KPIs or financial KPIs. If you've done that type of research and that type of due diligence on what's in it relative to the positive impact of the KPIs to each executive who's implicated, whether it's a decision maker or influencer, then you're ready. Okay? Because if you haven't done that, then you're not ready at all, and you're wasting somebody's time.
And those KPIs that you spoke about, when it comes to preparation, here in the United States, we talk about financial documentation that may not necessarily translate to other parts of the world. So if we think about it in terms of multinational and global customers that we serve, what are some of the research tools that you think are most effective to be able to prepare, especially recognizing that customer organization might be headquartered outside of the US, for example?
So there's someone that you have to do with all companies. If it's a public company, public meaning listed on an exchange, you have to have done your basics, your core, which means gone through the annual report, gone through the analyst call, the call with analysts, and gone through the 10K, if it's a US company, the 10K being a regulatory document that will basically have a lot of categories in terms of risks, in terms of growth, in terms of security, in terms of threats, in terms of executive compensation. All of these things would be in the 10K by law, by law. If it's not a US company, you're still going to have registration documents in their respective country that will give you a lot of that information, maybe not as comprehensive as in the US, but still enough to differentiate yourself and make the case of the value, okay? So you need to basically have gone through these documents in advance and know how you can help me relative to those issues on those documents, okay? I cannot cheat on these documents. The penalty is too high. Going to jail, I mean, it's fines and jail. So it's not like an annual report. An annual report, it's nice and pretty and colors and people are happy. It's marketing. We work a lot with the marketing group on the annual report. We work a lot with the legal people on the 10K and the other regulatory 20F for EMEA companies, for example. So look at these regulatory documents that are public, by the way. You don't have to pay for them. You can find them either through the government agencies or you can find them through the website of the company. And you can get that information and see what have I said. People ask, what keeps you up at night? It's in that document. It's called the risk factors in that document. People want to know what I'm going to be compensated on. It's in that document for executive remuneration or executive compensation. Look at what it is and think about how you can impact it. It doesn't mean you need to come in and say, I'm going to increase your pay or anything like that. But you got to know what's going to be important to me. I'll give you a case in point. When I was at Charles Schwab, the CXO compensation was based on 3 variables. One was revenue growth, one was profit margin, and one was called CSS, customer satisfaction surveys, those 3. And basically our bonuses were based on these 3 KPIs. So if you look at the document, you'll see that even if we met our revenue growth, even if we met our profit margin, if we didn't meet our CSS and it fell below a certain threshold, our bonus goes to 0, donuts we called it. So that's an important KPI from a personal standpoint, obviously from a company and a customer standpoint too. But you should know that coming in, because if I have one vendor that tells me this is going to increase your revenue and improve your margin, great. But if another one, your competitor says, and it will improve CSS and customer sat, guess who I'm going to be leaning to? So just know a little bit how I'm influenced in my decision making and make sure you looked at these reports.
Now, I'm sure many of our listeners are saying, well, Jacques, that's great if my customer is a publicly held organization, but what if they're privately held and these documents are not available to me? What's your advice to them?
Well, if you don't have a public company, then give up. Give up. I'm just kidding. No, there's no excuse why you can't do similar research, because even as a private company, I have competitors. We are competing for the same customers. We're influenced by the same external factors, whether they're political or economic or supplier. We have the same factors that influence our business. So what you want to do is you want to look who's my closest competitor or competitors that is public and look at those reports. You're going to see the issues that I worry about because we're both looking at the same direction in terms of what we need to do. And if you prepare and study their 10K or their 20F and you come in to see me, guess what? I'm really surprised and impressed that you know so much about my business and my concerns and my issues and my challenges. So private or public, fair enough. Public has a little bit more information, but you have enough information in private that it's no excuse not to be prepared.
I think that is such great advice because, to your point, you have an empathy and an appreciation for someone who's doing the heavy lifting, the due diligence, the research on your competitors and bringing insights about them. But to your point, if you're the CFO in company A and I'm, let's say, the competitor's company B, there's a good chance that those CFOs are probably being measured against similar priorities and KPIs. But at least coming forward with a point of view to validate with you, are these consistent with what you're measured on and how you're being measured against? Are these priorities consistent with your priorities? They might be in a different order, but they're probably roughly and generally accurate, would you say?
I would say very much so, because also, even when you look at analysts, those who basically research companies to recommend stocks and things like that, don't care about the stock, but care about what they say. They will compare management of within the same industry, and they will look at management effectiveness. That's how direct and blunt they are. Management effectiveness in terms of performance. So whether it's public or private, they're going to compare me to my peers and how well have I performed. If I am running a company that is a manufacturing company, they may compare the utilization rate of the plants versus other plants and see, well, if the utilization of my plants are running at 80% and theirs are running at 90%, what's going on? If they have improved year over year and I have not or have gone down, I can't blame the environment or the external factors or the price of oil or any of those things or labor. So they'll compare us peer to peer, which means you should also do that research. And it's available. So you don't have to do the hard work. You just have to read the report and understand it.
That makes great sense. We talked a lot about kind of those traditional metrics on which executives are compensated. Are there non-conventional or new metrics that are kind of front and center that teams need to know about as they're meeting with their executives?
Yes, I definitely think there are quite a few that have popped up in the last 5 years. So if you look at the digital transformation initiatives that have gone on, obviously there are going to be metrics about, what else we need to worry about. So there are metrics relating to sustainability. You see new roles in the C-suite, Chief Sustainability Officer, for a reason. That's more of a focus. So ESG is one of the metrics. Customer experience is another metric. There's a lot of stuff that's now customer-centric, customer-focused. You have also Chief Customer Officer that pops up, Success Officer. So things relating to customer satisfaction, things relating to environment and ESG and sustainability, whether it's carbon footprint or DEI progress, things relating to cybersecurity also. That's another KPI that's not financial, but super important. And I may say one more that's also important is things relating to employee retention and turnover. These KPIs that probably were not here 5-10 years ago are popping up in executives' compensation because that's really the core of growing successfully. And we are going to be accountable for them. So if you impact those, make sure you point it out. And how and why and how much.
Great advice. Jacques, I know we're coming up on time. It feels like we've had a 5-minute conversation. I mean, we could talk all day. I love it.
We're coming up on time. I thought we just started to go on.
Well, we're just getting started for sure, but Yeah. In the spirit of time, what last piece of guidance or advice would you give our listeners on how they should be more effective with meeting executives, being better prepared, understanding the business better? What's the one big idea that you'd love to close on?
Put yourself in my shoes. Know my industry, my company, know me. Know what drives me. Do your research in terms of the public information, and know before you meet with me, what do you have for me that I don't know, that I don't have, that's of value to me. Know that before the meeting. Of course, during the meeting, it could change and evolve. But if you don't come in with something in your pocket, you're not going to have a good meeting. And I'm going to go on to your next competitor or to somebody else.
Excellent. That's great advice. Jacques, thank you. Look, as we kind of come to close on this series with Jacques Sciammas, I just want to remind our listeners, his organization is Selling to Executives. We'll give you the information to be able to reach out to Jacques directly, and of course, through the Strategic Account Management Association, information on our website as well. You know, we started by unpacking how executives like Jacques and others think and define value, and then we explored the evolving structure of the C-suite and how that's proliferating across organizations. And then we finished with a focused discussion on research and preparation. I think the common thread through all of this, executive selling, is about aligning to what matters most to decision makers inside of their head, speaking their language and understanding what's important, how they're measured, and the outcomes they're seeking, and showing up with clarity and confidence when it comes time to talk about us, where we've done things before, where we have use cases, and how we can help influence executives and others make the case for change and internally. So, Jacques, I just want to say a special thanks to you. I appreciate your partnership, and I really appreciated the opportunity to spend today with you. So thank you very much for that. Based on all that you know and do for Sciamma, thank you so much, really.
Gordon, thank you very much, and everything you do for Sciamma, and Sciamma being such a great tool in terms of learning about all these things you need to do, not just in the C-suite, but in terms of being successful as a salesperson and a sales leader. So thanks again. This is a pleasure.
Thank you. And to our listeners, stay tuned for future episodes of the Executive Conversation, where we're going to dive into topics like value proposition design, how executives prioritize investments, how they're organizing differently to meet the demands of disruption, and through times of uncertainty, how they respond, be agile, and build resilience into their organizations that are risk-proof. But until next time, I want to wish all of our audience and listeners out there good luck and good selling, and we'll see you in our next podcast series. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Gordon.
Thanks, Jacques. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We hope today's wisdom will lead you down the path of experiencing success in your profession. Remember, the key to successful strategic account management is discovering where your customer wants to go and helping them get there. Subscribe to our podcasts at strategicaccounts.org. We hope you will leave a positive rating and share this podcast with your friends and colleagues. If there's something we can do to improve our podcasts, please let us know. That's all for today. See you on the next one.